out to crucify him. And on the way, they laid hold of a man from Cyrene, perhaps we should say, of Simon, and later his children, Alexander and Rufus, became Christians. But this man is compelled to carry the cross because it was getting too heavy for Jesus. Now in Luke, we pick this up now, in Luke 23, verse 27 through 32, please.
And there followed him a great multitude of people and of women who bewailed and lamented him. But Jesus, turning to them, said, Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me, but weep for yourselves and for your children. For behold, the days are coming when they will say, Blessed are the barren, and the wombs that never bore, and the breasts that never gave suck. Then they will begin to say to the mountains, Fall on us, and to the hills, Cover us. For if they do this when the wood is green, what will happen when it is dry?
As the crowd went along, the women prayed for Jesus and bewailed him and lamented him. And another account says that they blessed his mother. But Jesus said, Weep for yourselves, weep for your children. Judgment is going to come on you, and prepare yourselves for that day. And we should too in our own day. The Lord bless you. We've now come to the time of the crucifixion. I read from a few verses in Matthew 27 when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of a skull. They offered him, that's after he was crucified, wine to drink, mingled with gall. This was a pain deadener. But when he tasted it and realized what it was, he did not accept the pain deadener. And they crucified him. And we'll turn to the account in John 19, beginning in verse 18 through 22, and Bud Beal will read for us.
There they crucified him, and with him 2 others, one on either side, and Jesus between them. Pilate also wrote a title and put it on the cross. It read, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. Many of the Jews read this title, for the place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and it was written in Hebrew, in Latin, and in Greek. The chief priests of the Jews then said to Pilate, Do not write the King of the Jews, but this man said, I am the King of the Jews. Pilate answered, What I have written, I have written.
The Romans were ingenious at methods of torture. They had, among other things, and you'll recall from Paul's letter to Romans, he speaks at one place about that he was handcuffed to a man, the man of death. And the Romans had a practice. They could take a corpse, if one was convenient, and handcuff a man to it and leave him with the corpse all night. They also devised crucifixion, which was a slow means of death. A person who is crucified is in pain. Some men have lived several days. We're going to find in a moment that it became necessary to break the legs of the thieves and to ensure the death of Jesus by a spear thrust, because ordinarily they would have lived much longer than the period of time between the crucifixion and the end of this pre-Sabbath day. We do not want to dwell at length upon the excruciating pain involved. The place where the nail is put is quite often not through the actual palm, but is right through the base of the hand, so that the weight is carried on the bones in the wrist. We know that Jesus showed his hands, but that would have been true whether the nail was placed in the actual palm or placed right at the base of the hand. This we do not know. It was placed through the hand. Often the weight of the body was supported by ropes in order that the nail would not tear out of the hand. Then the feet, which are very sensitive, were crossed, and a single nail was driven through them. This was done while the person was still lying on the ground on the cross. Then the cross was raised and dropped into the hole which had been cut for the foot of the cross, and the weight of the body hitting the bottom of the, when the pole hit the bottom of the hole, would be tremendous. The person hangs there and really dies from exhaustion. Crucifixion touches no vital spot. It does not affect the heart, the internal organs. It's a struggle for existing under conditions leading to exhaustion. The interpretation of the crucifixion is what distinguishes the crucifixion of Christ from thousands of other people who have been crucified. There were sometimes they crucified as many as hundreds or even 1,000 people at a time as the Romans dealt with their enemies. But out of all these various crucifixions, we've picked one, and the one we put at the center of our Christian religion. It's a very strange thing, that when religion is associated with righteousness, holiness, that the person who's worshipped throughout the entire Christian world is a man who was under arrest and was executed as a common criminal between two thieves. We worship a person that the Romans legally considered a felon, even though the man who committed him to death said he was not worthy of it. He died between two thieves. The world, both Jewish and Gentile, entered into this verdict and gave Jesus the treatment they would have given a thief. That we worship this crucified Christ is based upon the fact that he did not stay dead. Our interpretation of this death at this moment is modified by what we believe about what happened 3 days later. We cannot read the account of the crucifixion without having in mind what we believe about Easter. The two are absolutely linked together. The crucified Christ is the risen Christ. The dying Christ is the living Christ. The submitting Christ is the reigning Christ. And we worship the crucified living Christ. We worship the humiliated reigning Christ. We worship the weak, defeated, victorious Christ. All the same person. And so even here as we read this account of his death, we're not lost in morbidity, we're not lost in pity, we're not lost in agony. We share the coming triumph which is only hours away. In verse 23 of John following, chapter 19, we have a remarkable fulfillment of prophecy which is given to us in Psalm 22. And will you read now through 23 through verse 25, Bud?
When the soldiers had crucified Jesus, they took his garments and made 4 parts, one for each soldier. But his tunic was without seam, woven from top to bottom. So they said to one another, "Let us not tear it, but cast lots for it to see whose it shall be." This was to fulfill the scripture. They parted my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. So the soldiers did this.